Hello, freak bitches. Trouble in the video game industry with these people that are predominantly left-wing and predominantly progressive. Like, quote, I say progressive, but progressive is kind of a dirty word now. It's becoming...
There's a difference between liberal and progressive.
Well, it would be great if everybody was liberal. It would be great if everybody was progressive. It would be great if everybody wanted people to have, you know, freedom of choice and freedom to be whoever you want. But that's not really what those things are anymore. Those things are like ideologies. They're these predetermined patterns of behavior that people subscribe to in a very, very rigid way. What did you find was an issue when people found out about your extreme understanding and respect for the history of the United States?
Well, they think it's primarily they think it was like kind of a joke because not a haha joke, but like you're a clown kind of because
why?
Because I believe in a small government, for instance. I believe in low taxation. I believe in the elimination of the income tax and things like this. These are but I don't actually have like not all my ideas are radical or even outside of the mainstream. Socially, I'm probably further to the left than many of these people. You know. I think that it goes back to this idea, and this is something Dave Rubin has touched on a lot in his show, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which is this idea that it's really all or nothing. Like, they don't want to be an ally with someone that might be able to help them in X, Y, and Z if they disagree with people in A, B, and C. So they could have had a great ally in me and being like, I've been pro-gay marriage forever. I've been pro-choice. You know, I'm for the decriminalization of drugs. I'm for the legalization of prostitution. I'm for a lot of these things that are very far to the left socially that we probably could find some agreement on somewhere, and we can work on those things and get those things done together. But because I say also, like, hey, the income tax is predatory and really hurts people. I owned a business, and I guess I own another one now. And I know like that I could have hired another person if taxes weren't so onerous on me. Right. And so I also stand on there, and they're like, this never happened. This stuff that you just said never happened. This left wing stuff that we agree on never happened because you don't believe in. Because you have this one thing that we have a problem with, and now we're going to get you.
But you're not being clear about that. Like, okay. What is the issue when it comes to small government? Like, you wanting small government, what's the opposition to that? What are they saying?
Well, they say, like, they make a lot of it's insinuations because a lot of it isn't even things that I feel or believe. Okay. So an example would be, you know, I see a lot of people say all the time, like, Colin doesn't believe in welfare. Or Colin doesn't believe in Social Security. And I'm like, I never said that, actually. I believe that these things should be reformed and maybe taken back a step. But they even look at that as a push too far on the system. I guess what I'm trying to say to you, and I'm sorry I'm not being more lucid with you, I'm trying my hardest, is that you have to agree with them lockstep. Right. If they see you in one way that is injurious to their cause or that is conflicting or contrary to what they believe, they do not give a fuck about anything else you believe. And that's the thing that always frustrated me, and what so surprised me when people really were running me out on a rail out of the gaming industry with a completely innocuous joke, which I think tells you everything you need to know about the intent, that they don't want allies in different ways, allies in different clothes, allies in different, they just want complete, you know, it's very Orwellian. They just want you to be completely like them, and if you're not like them, they don't want anything to do with you. And it's not even like I was advocating for anything crazy. I don't advocate for anything crazy, I don't think.
That doesn't sound crazy at all. But what's interesting is we've kind of turned a corner where in many ways the right is more tolerant than the left to variations in their ideology. Whereas the right is much more tolerant to people that support gay marriage. The right is much more tolerant to people that, I mean, you can fill in the blanks. There's a bunch of different rights that the right would sort of accept from someone who also voted Republican, but the left isn't. Like, if you got to the point where, like, I got in a heated argument with someone once about abortion, which I'm pro-choice, but I was saying, well, essentially, it was a criticism of Richard Dawkins' quote where he's comparing a human embryo to a pig fetus or a pig embryo. Well, I forget the terms he used, but I'm like, well, that's ridiculous because one of them is going to become a person if you don't take it out of your body. Right. And that was the idea behind it. Like, you can't use that sort of an analogy because it's not true. I mean, it's just one has the potential for being a person. And I was being accused by this guy of being right-wing because of it. And I was like, well, I'm not right-wing. I'm just talking about the potential for life. Like, a pig embryo is never going to be my neighbor Mike. You know, it's just not. You know what I mean?
Right, of course.
But that baby, I'm not saying you should be forced to make that baby a person and keep it in your body when it's a few cells and then 2 weeks old and then I'm not saying that you can't choose when to terminate your pregnancy. But what I'm saying is you're terminating a pregnancy. We both know what you're doing. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to do it, but to pretend that it's not messy. And nobody wants it to be messy. Nobody wants it to be a complicated issue. They want it to be cut and dry. If you're on the left in particular, it's pro-choice, a woman's reproductive choice, the freedom of your body to do what you want. I get all that. I'm 100% with you. But let's not lie about what it is, because as soon as we distort the reality of what the thing is, then we put up these ideological boundaries and blinders, and we make communication very difficult, and we make these rigid ideologies almost like a religion. They're almost like dogma. And when you do that,
great way to put it.
I mean, when you do that, you have real problems because people can't communicate. So if someone
these are the things that I forgot for so long, in a way, because I was writing about games, which I love. I love games. I think they're important. They're an important piece of escape. They're an important piece of art. I think that's all great. But being able to engage with someone like yourself, with someone like Dave Rubin or someone like a Steven Crowder or whoever it might be, I was on Glenn Beck's radio show last week. It brings out an energy in me.
Did he wear a bow tie?
I was.
Did he? Oh, did he wear a bow tie?
I don't know. I was on the phone, so I have no. He could have been naked for all I know. But it brings out an energy in me where I'm like, I can finally engage with people that know what the fuck they're talking about in this particular realm, which I think is so exciting and so interesting. And we can have, we debated. We don't agree on everything. I think that's awesome.
So that's really cool that you found a very big positive out of this. Now you can express yourself more honestly, and you can gravitate towards your real interests.
And yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to use this as an opportunity for myself, and trying to use it as an opportunity to just carve out a little slice of the internet, however big or small it might be, where we can affect some positive change and like an idea, ideas and learning and free expression and free thought and making mistakes and disagreeing and all that. I think that's all great. I want to use this as an example. I want to get away from the orthodoxy of the gaming industry. It's stifling and it's strangling, and that's why.
Do you think? Let's go back to that, because why do you think it is like that? Why is the gaming industry so hardcore, ideologically left-wing, progressive, like no variations, no room for debate? Why is that?
Well, I think it's portrayed. It's like all of it's funneled through a media that is hyper liberal, right? So it's similar in a way to what's going on with the media in news and politics. These, underneath the surface of the gaming industry, there are plenty of conservatives and libertarians. Do
they hide?
Yeah, they do. A lot of them. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a lot of them talk to me. I mean, I know people that are like heads of studios that feel the way I do. I know people that are in the trenches at QA and doing like very menial things at gaming studios that feel the way I do, and everything in between. I remember a GDC, Game Developer Conference in San Francisco, which happens every spring. 6 or 7 years ago, a guy pulled me aside. This is the first time it ever happened to me, and this is when I was kind of starting to make a name for myself. And he pulled me aside and he's like, "Hey man, I work at X, Y, and Z, and he works on a big game." And he's like, "Keep doing what you're doing. There are a lot of people out there that agree with what you're saying, but they don't dare speak out because they'll get lambasted in some way. Look what happened to me over something so innocuous."
Well, you were saying that there's some pushback about your ideas before this.
Yes.
What did you experience?
Well, so every time I would write a politically driven op-ed, for instance, when I was at IGN, I was senior editor, but I kind of had like editor at large qualities, meaning for people that don't know, editor at large basically, in a way, do whatever they want. Like they'll find something to write about. I used to go away for days at a time and go research things and then write these big 50,000 word articles.
50,000 words?
Yeah, the history of
Who's got that kind of time, dude?
Well, I did. I carved it out.
But what about people reading it? Who's got that kind of time?
It was in 5 parts.
Oh, okay.
The history of Naughty Dog was like my opus. Naughty Dog's this very huge, actually in Santa Monica, a very huge game developer, very talented game developer. I went and talked to 19 people, got about a bunch of primary sources and all these things, and wrote this piece that I really cared about. And so, but when I would write things like the political correctness piece about, let me give you an example. There's a game that was canceled maybe 5 years ago or so. It was pretty late in development, so it's weird to cancel a game when they've already spent a bunch of money on it. It was called 6 Days in Fallujah. And it was a game about, it was a third-person shooter, I think, about the experience of Fallujah in Iraq, terrible conflict that happened there. And people, even on the right, were getting upset about it, being like, "It's too soon. This is still ongoing. How can you do?" And I wrote a piece being like, "What are you all saying? Like, this is awesome. This is so great that someone wants to tell a story like this and do something like this, and you just get it from all sides. People will be like, it's not sensitive. It's all these kinds of things. And then the girlfriend mode thing I wrote about, where people were like, "Oh, you're a sexist," and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, I'm actually just protecting the sanctity of a man who might have made a mistake. That's it. you know, instead of destroying him. It goes back to this whole thing of like the
wait a minute, I lost you there.
I'm sorry, the girlfriend mode, the Borderlands story I told you, where the guy and they were all going after him and going after his job and doing all these things, and I wrote a piece being like, hey,
yeah,
like if this is a farce, guys, like he made a mistake, maybe, and I don't know that he should.
And it was a soft target, and they just went after it.
Exactly, and it reminds me.
And so you experienced blowback?
Yeah, every time.
From that?
Yeah, every time.
Like, what was the blowback from that? From you defending this guy, saying, well, he just really fucked up the way he described things, but it was innocent in that regard.
Well, you lose, like, social cachet when every time something like this would happen, right? So that's why I say, like, this was the moment, the joke was the moment that they were looking to pounce, really. And I'm not saying that they were calculating everyone's waiting, but they saw an opportunity and they took it. Because over time, you lose respect over people because of your political stances, completely reasonable political stances, I think, where they remember that you said this and you said this and you said this and you said this. So this
wasn't like really, you weren't really having debates with people where you were disagreeing with them. It was simply a matter of reaction to some of the things that you had written where they were trying to box you into some sort of a conservative group.
Right, and they would call me an alt, you know, now it's like I'm a Nazi, I'm alt-right, I'm all these things. I'm like, I don't think I have one alt-right. I don't even really know what the alt-right means, but
what is alt-right? Like what?
To me, it seems like the far fringes, like the Richard Spencers of the world, the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists and the actual nationalists. You know.
Well, as soon as you write alt on something, I feel like it's a message board thing. Like alt-right, it's like it's a Reddit thing.
Yeah, you know? Exactly.
So alt-right, alternative right, like what is it?
I mean, I don't know the.
So
I mean,
maybe you're it.
I hope not. based on their characterization of it.
Well,
but to me, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Well, how would they define you as being alt-right? What would they say that you have alt-right characteristics?
You can see these, you know, message boards, for instance. A lot of people were very supportive on Reddit and all these kind of places that are a little more known for free thought. But there's this one video game message board in particular that is just insane. And there was a 125 page or so thread about me, 20 posts, or I think it might even be 50 posts a page. And I was reading it, and it hurt some of it. That because people are like, first of all, people are telling me I said things I never said.
Like what?
Did things. People like Colin's, you know, against, you know, his name is no taxation. Doesn't even believe that taxes should exist. I often talk about how I really like Ayn Rand and I really like Atlas Shrugged, but I don't consider myself an objectivist. I don't believe that selfishness is necessarily a virtue. I just think she's interesting, and I think some of her ideas are interesting. You know, God forbid I exist somewhere in the gray area.
Right.
But they're like, Colin's an objectivist and he's selfish and blah blah blah, and like, oh, Colin's a Nazi and he's a racist. I think the term a lot of them use was soft racist or soft bigot.
Soft racist.
Being like that he doesn't intentionally or actually overtly say anything, but supports causes that are racist or sexist. These are the kind of character assassinations that were going on. Basically, people with on bulletin boards with yarn and maps, like that's how I picture them, like trying to make continuous connections, and it's like these things aren't even things I feel and things that I said or being taken out of context. I often use the in video games, one of the big things is like, you know, there's a need for diverse casts, diverse protagonists and stuff like that. And I often use the case that I used to use the saying, I don't believe in diversity for diversity's sake. I believe that an artist should tell his story. So if an artist, a writer of a game wants to have an all-white cast and that's what he thinks serves his story, I don't think that makes him a racist.
Right.
If he wants to have an all-Asian cast, I don't think that makes him a racist either. I think that's what he wants to do. And people took that out of context and were calling me a racist and a bigot and all these kinds of things, and it's hurtful because there's no one there no one's defending me, you know, and I can't defend myself because I'll just make it worse. So it was kind of like this hapless kind of situation that I found myself in, and I tried to make the best of it.
I had a debate once about that with a friend who was an Asian actor, and he was talking about the lack of roles for Asians in Hollywood and what a massive issue is, and you know that he wanted to raise awareness of it. And I was like, man, but we're talking about a creative venture. You're talking about somebody writing a story. Like, I think the correct way to go about it is to try to figure out how to get your own project through, or someone else who feels very strongly about this trying to get their own project through. But the right way is not for someone to have to compromise their creative vision in order to encompass the full spectrum of races in whatever story they're writing. Like creative story, like if you want to write a story about a small town in Maine, like Stephen King has done so often, you shouldn't have to have 10% Asians in that story. I mean, that's not what creativity is about. It's about there are places and people and where you're going to run into all black folks, or you're going to run into all Norwegian people. I mean, and those stories are just as valid as a story that's fully diverse. You know, and I don't think that necessarily makes anything better. And I also think that when you're talking about that you're sort of talking about it like there should be a quota, you know, and like Hollywood should recognize the need for these people to be in films and movies, and it's just you're making this politically correct sort of you're passing these judgments on this thing that is all about imagination. I mean, Hollywood essentially, like when you're making a television show or you're making a movie, it's really about an imagination. It's about imagination and vision, and having that vision being entertaining for people. And if you like only want to write about the people that you were in college with, that you shared a dorm room with, you should be allowed to. And if there's a disproportionate amount of people that are doing that happen to be white males, that, you know, we should probably try to figure out why. But the idea that you have to force people to hire Asian folks or black folks or women or whatever, that seems so crazy to me.
Yeah, serve the story, right?
Yeah.
And to give you a little glimpse, to give you some context with what might be going on in gaming, there was this very popular game series called The Witcher, which is made by a Polish developer called CD Projekt. They're in Warsaw. And it's based on the fusion of like Polish kind of identity with this famous book series that's based on like kind of Polish lore. You know, like kind of the Lord of the Rings, but in Eastern Europe. And one guy's cartoon character that works at this website called Polygon, in his review was talking about how there was no diversity there, and everyone's like, dude, it's Poland, and it's based on Poland of yore,
right?
Like, and it's about dragons and like goblins, and there's some white guys, and this is like what you're upset about. You know,
yeah.
and there's another guy making, and I think he's Slovakian. I don't want to, somewhere in Eastern Europe, making a game called Kingdom Come Deliverance. And it's supposed to be a very realistic look at something like the 14th or 15th century in that area. And again, they're complaining there's no diversity. There's no diversity. And he's like, there was no black people in this area in 1500. I'm trying to make a game that's true to the era. That doesn't make him a racist. And these are the kinds of, this is just the kind of bullshit that's going. But you see this in movies, you see this in TV shows. It's not exclusive to gaming, but it's what I've had to deal with for a long time, and I'm just sick of it.
What's the root of it though? What's causing it? Like why do people feel like they have to put a black person in a game about Poland in the 1500s or whatever it was?
I don't. Thankfully, the people that make the games don't care. You're like they're like, we're gonna make our game.
Right.
The people that are complaining about it, they're virtue signaling, which is not even a term I even knew what it meant until a few weeks ago. Like I heard people throw that term around. I didn't quite know what it meant. I looked into it. It's, you know, and you know what it is. It's the idea that these virtuous people. It's the same people that attacked me for the joke. I have to be virtuous and show that I am against sexism, so I have to attack the man. You know, I have to do all these kinds of things in this need. You know, but what they're saying when they're saying we have to have black people in this game in Eastern Europe in the 1500s, what they're really saying is you're a racist.
Yeah,
that's the subtext, and it goes back to this character assassination and this need to destroy.